Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, President Cyril Ramaphosa has finally announced the details of the national dialogue that will discuss challenges facing the country. But what will it achieve? How will it help resolve the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment and inequality? We'll speak to struggle stalwart Solly Msimanga about this evening. Also on the show, did former Public Works Minister Sihle Zikalala protect the IDT CEO, Tebogo Malaka, from investigations following allegations of irregularities around a 45 million rand lease deal agreement she signed? Well, Zikalala says reports suggesting he played a part in protecting the CEO when he was minister are false and are part of a smear campaign. He'll speak to us tonight. And then later, how much has the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile's international trips cost taxpayers so far? Reports are suggesting that his office has racked up close to 8 million rand in expenditure on international trips since taking office in July 2024. And that has raised concerns that some of the trips have been extravagant. We'll hear from his office tonight. But first, my comment. So finally, the announcement has been made. The president has announced the details of this national dialogue that's been in the making for a while now. Remember, the president first made the announcement during his inauguration last year that he would convene a national dialogue to bring different stakeholders and all South Africans through various formations together for a social compact. And that is to realize the national development plan and to discuss the challenges that are facing the country. Well, tonight, the president has announced the details of this initiative.
Over the last few months, we've been engaged in discussions with various entities on the purpose and the form of the national dialogue. In the wake of these consultations, there is broad agreement that given the challenges our country is facing at the moment, we should convene the national dialogue. The idea of holding a dialogue is not a new concept in our country. In many ways, having dialogues is part of our DNA as a nation. At every important moment in the history of our country, we have come together as a nation to confront our challenges and forge a path into the future in dialogue with one another. Through dialogues, we were able to deal with the challenges that the apartheid system caused in our country and achieved peace and overcame violence. We established a democracy and ended apartheid. Following the negotiations process, we used dialogue to start building a united nation where once there had only been conflict and division. We achieved all this because we came together in dialogue to discuss our difficulties, our concerns, our hopes, and our aspirations as a people.
The president has outlined that poverty, unemployment, and inequality are deep wounds that prevent the country from reaching its full potential as a nation. He says millions of people are underemployed and unemployed, many of those who work and wages that cannot sustain them or even their families. He spoke about crime, gender-based violence and corruption and how prevalent they are across our society. And he says this dialogue will be a people-led, society-wide process to reflect on the state of our country in order for us to reimagine our future.
I will be calling a national convention on Friday, the 15th of August 2025. This national convention will represent the diversity of the South African nation. The first national convention will set the agenda for the national dialogue. It will be a representative gathering, bringing together government, political parties, civil society formations, business, labor, traditional leaders, religious leaders, cultural workers, sports organizations, women, youth, community voices, amongst others. Through their various political, social, and other formations, in their workplaces and places of worship, communities, villages, and sites of learning, South Africans will, in the months following the National Convention, be encouraged to be in dialogue to define our nation's path into the future. The views, concerns, and proposals that will emerge from this conversation will be brought together at a second National Convention that is planned to be held in the beginning of next year. This second National Convention will reinforce our shared values and adopt a common vision and program of action for our country into the future. We expect that the National Convention will finalize a compact that outlines the roles and responsibilities of all South Africans.
So part of what the president announced is that there will be a number of people that will form part of this dialogue as part of leading it. There are a number of people the president announced. These are leading figures, the president said, in our society that will be reflecting the great diversity of our nation with a proven commitment to the advancement of social cohesion and nation building. And they include all sorts of people: Justice Edwin Cameron, Desiree Ellis, you've got Siakolisi, Professor Nomboniso Kasa, Professor Tinyuko Maluleka, Khotatso Monchani, the Grand Slam tennis champion. There are so many people that are part of this list as well. So Thabo Mbeki, remember the former president, has also supported this idea of a national dialogue.
Given what has happened in the country over these 30 years, and given where we are today, it's going to be very, very important, in my view, that there must be a national dialogue. That our people, for the very first time since 1994, for the very first time, that our people get together to talk about the South Africa they want and the South Africa they don't want, in a very inclusive national dialogue.
All right, so that's what the former president also said. Well, the question we are asking you tonight, having heard what the president said, and we want you to share your thoughts with us about what you think of this dialogue. Do you think the national dialogue will benefit the country? What do you think it can achieve? Or is it going to be another talk shop? So what is going to be discussed in this dialogue that we don't really know about? Because we are aware of the challenges that are facing this country, aren't we? So talking about them won't be the silver bullet. And yes, the conversation is probably much needed now, but what happens after? So how hopeful are you that this will help us resolve our challenges as a country? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you're sending that voice note from, and please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. After the break, we'll speak to struggle stalwart Solly Msimanga about this national dialogue and the details that the president has announced this evening. Stay with us. Welcome back. So President Cyril Ramaphosa, as we've told you, has announced this evening that a national convention will take place on the 15th of August this year to set the agenda for a national dialogue on challenges and opportunities facing the country. The president says the national convention will be representative of the people of South Africa. We'll have details. Of course, you heard from some of what the president said this evening, but to just discuss how crucial this dialogue could be in resolving the challenges that the president announced. We're joined by the struggle stalwart, Dr. Solly Msimanga, joining us now via Zoom. Thank you so much for making time for us, Dr. Msimanga. Good evening.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation. I greet your viewers too.
So, there's no doubt, Dr. Msimanga, that there is a need for a conversation, especially now that the country is in this government of national unity. There are a lot of challenges as well that are facing the country. But the question is, will this be another talk shop? Because if history is anything to go by, what's this going to really provide as outcomes?
Well, there is absolutely no doubt that at the rate we're going, there is a need for the nation to discuss. And I am impressed with the range of stakeholders who have been invited to participate in the leadership of this national dialogue. So the intentions are good, but as you point out, the recommendations that will be made will ultimately be implemented by the political system. It's going to be extremely important that these are taken seriously. I wish we could have a way of making sure that if they didn't do that, we would find a way of sanctioning them. The situation is really bad. You see it in the streets. People are poor. 30 years on, really poor. In fact, statistics indicate that there's been an increase. Unemployment, I was glad the president talked about, confesses that unemployment is high and there's underemployment. Worst is that it's happening among young people. So there's really a need. I don't think we should allow this not to be successful.
Yeah.
There must be a way of ensuring that the recommendations that are made by this group of representative people are implemented.
And perhaps that's where the challenge is, because you know, Dr. Msimanga, about the challenges that this country has, and of course the policies that have been developed by, and I'll mention the ANC government because they were in charge for 30 years until the elections last year. But the challenge has always been implementation, because there are some incredible policies that could help resolve some of our challenges, but have those been efficiently implemented? And have we had the right political leadership? Have we had even the political appetite to resolve the issues that we have? I mean, these people are going to tell us about the things that we already know. Nothing is going to come out of this dialogue that we don't know in as far as the challenges are concerned. So how do we deal with the issue of implementation and the political will to do something about what's going to come out?
There is an absolute need for the political parties, for the leaders of the political parties to act with maturity. It's not always been in evidence. The fact of the matter is that for the first time, as you pointed out, we are in a coalition government. The crisis is not made easy by that. In fact, if anything, it's not the kind of coalition where people of like minds say, let's come together and see how we run the government. But any patriot, you know, patriotism is required now. The ANC has to realize that it's no longer in government, not alone. The Democratic Alliance must know that it's got a crucial role to play in making sure that this government of national unity succeeds. I'm mentioning the first two, but so is everybody else who is in this coalition. You know, what's been very disappointing is that people have tended to play to the public gallery on differences. They must be disciplined, sufficiently disciplined to discuss their issues internally and not impress people that we know we're still in charge, we're the biggest, or somebody else says you can't do this without us. There is a real need to, in fact, this is an opportunity for South Africa. We in the ANC have run the country for 30 years. It became a disaster as time went on. People have been outside in the opposition saying you should do these things this way and that, now have the opportunity to play a positive role to make sure that this does happen.
Yeah.
It must be a give and take. I think what's made this difficult is that people still want to go and tell the media and the public that this is what they want, things that ought to be discussed internally. That should stop.
So what would be your advice to even the interministerial committee? Because part of what the president announced this evening is that there will be an interministerial committee that will sort of be looking at and organizing these conventions. What would be your advice? Because you said you wish there could be an opportunity to sanction them should they not really pick up on the outcomes of this convention and implement them. What would be your advice so that we are not going to be stuck here with a report that's going to be produced telling us what we already know about the challenges facing this country, and that's going to sit on the desk of the president? Or the politicians themselves in the government of national unity are going to disagree about whether or not to even implement some of the aspects of that report. That report is going to need the buy-in of the entire government of national unity.
The respective leaders of these parties have a crucial role to play here. You can't have members of your party misbehaving or speaking contrary to what's being planned. It's going to be very important for all the parties to be disciplined, and that can only be enforced by the leaders. Somebody doesn't just burst out and make a statement sitting somewhere and the president or the leader of the DA or the leader of the other parties sits quietly. They must be publicly called to order. And if strong action needs to be taken, that has to, in the interest of the country, give them a break, substitute them and get people who are serious to come into the party. The important thing really is to show that people can act as patriots, as South Africans in unity. No one wins when people still continue pushing their agendas for public interest. And this really has been one of the major problems that we've experienced up to now. I don't know why the leaders do not call the people to order and say, this is the line. Yeah. You are free to express yourself as strongly as possible, but within the correct environment. So that is, to me, is going to be successful depend on proper leadership, taking disciplinary action. Don't like to talk about discipline, but really making sure that people are in line. And if they are not in line, don't hesitate. The loyalty is more to the people than to the individuals who are spoilers,
All right. Dr. Mavuso Msimanga, struggle stalwart, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And of course, we've been asking you this evening what you make of this national dialogue that's been announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Do you think that the dialogue will benefit the country? What do you think it can achieve? There's no doubt that whatever is going to come out is what we already know. What matters is there's a plurality of voices. There's got to be a report that's produced, and there's got to be political will to implement whatever will have been discussed and agreed on by this dialogue. Send us a WhatsApp voice note, or you can tweet us on @FaceTheNation SABC. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. Public Works and Infrastructure Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala has refuted claims of involvement in the controversial 49 million rand Independent Development Trust lease. Investigative journalism organization Amabungani reported how Zikalala and IDT board chairperson Kwazi Mshengu allegedly played key roles in halting a National Treasury probe into the controversial lease. Zikalala has dismissed the media reports as false. He says he will report this to the Office of the Public Protector. He joins us now for a conversation on this. Deputy Minister, thank you for your time. Welcome to Face the Nation.
Thank you. And thanks for having us in your program.
What is really the issue here? There are questions of integrity around the IDT CEO and questions around this 45 million rand lease deal that was signed. And whether or not she had the board approval to sign the lease and whether everything was done properly. From your advantage point and what you have looked at, particularly when you were minister, did you find anything that was untoward?
No, thanks for giving us the opportunity. But can you please allow me to correct the introduction that you made on this? Mm-hmm. The issue of the lease doesn't involve us. What the media, a particular media house reported is that we tried to suppress an investigation on the matter. So I thought I should correct that because you are saying we were not involved in the lease. Yet the issue is not the lease, is the investigation.
Yes. And
I
that's...
think I should, I have taken a day to explain this matter. When I arrived in the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, the issue of the lease was already in public. But the issue of the appointment of the CEO was toward completion. The board, led by Ms. Zimbili, recruited, advertised, and then they shortlisted and recommended a candidate to be appointed. They submitted their recommendation for the concurrence of the minister, which they received from the then Minister of Public Works, Honorable Delil. The matter was submitted to Cabinet. In that process, I was appointed as a minister, and I got the matter. I requested and pleaded that I be given an opportunity to look on the matter. I put the matter in abeyance. When I was then conducting the due diligence, I established that there was then a complaint which had not surfaced before about the lease. I then said to the then board, chaired by Mrs. Zimbi Nihils, I said, please investigate this matter, and we gave them 6 months. Instead of investigating, the board was involved in quarrels and conflict, and then they came back reporting about problems they are facing within themselves.
Yeah.
We asked why we shouldn't release them, and we said each of them must make a representation, which they made, and others opted to resign. We appointed a new board, and the new board said, not a new board, we augmented the board, and that board said, no, this matter has been contaminated a lot by IDT, previous leadership. They then requested the department to investigate. We investigated through the internal audit unit. And the internal audit unit made 2 fundamental findings. They said, 1, the matter needs a deeper investigation by an anti-fraud and corruption unit. We then said, let the department anti-fraud and corruption unit investigate this. We then said, they then said, secondly, the matter must be referred to Auditor General. We said, let's refer the matter through the DG to AG. I've been made aware that the report from internal anti-fraud and corruption unit has been completed. And it has been there for months, not made public. And then the contention is that there is this media report that suggests that we covered up the matter.
Okay.
Leaving the fact that while we were investigating, we were then confronted by a legal action from the side of the candidate who had been recommended by the very same board.
Yeah. Let me come in there, Deputy Minister. I think just to follow up on what you've said, I think you've given us a detailed assessment from your point. I want to understand, if you're saying that, and I'll go back to the investigation by Treasury in a moment, but you're saying the report was completed, but it wasn't made public. When was that report completed and why wasn't it made public?
The report, I'm told, Oh, let me start by saying I commissioned the investigation when I was a minister.
Yeah.
Before, when the investigation by the Anti-Fraud and Corruption Unit was ongoing, elections took place. And then a new minister came into the office. I gave a 33-page handover report to the new minister. Among other issues that were there was the issue of IDT and indicating that there is this outstanding investigation that needs to be followed up.
So when was it completed,
I would
though?
assume that the report was compiled maybe 3 months or 4 months ago.
Okay,
And
so
therefore, I'm not in a position, I'm not a minister. It should go to the DG, and the DG must then determine whether he take
All
it to
right.
the minister or where.
okay, let's get some clarity now on the Treasury investigation, because my understanding is the previous board had appointed or asked Treasury to investigate. Treasury, according to the reports, was at an advanced stage with its investigation. Why was the decision made, and was the decision made to halt the investigation of Treasury?
That is wrong. There was never a decision to halt any investigation. Firstly, the then board came to the department asking to appoint a forensic investigating company through Public Works. For some reason, internally, they were not happy with the process or whatever. They then went to the Treasury, which also was fine, allowed that. And then they then investigated that. Now, we never halted any investigation from Treasury. But secondly, whilst they said to us they are going to source a forensic company from Treasury to investigate, they never gave us any report. No one from Treasury or representing any entity came to us as the department and said, we are investigating, or we are Treasury, we will be investigating. That is the issue that has never been communicated to us. It is for that reason that I've taken a decision to approach the public protector to investigate whether there was on our side any attempt to cover up or suppress investigation that were conducted by any state organ.
Okay, what I want to understand, though, Deputy Minister, is were you aware? So you're saying that the decision was made, Treasury then decided they would investigate, but where is the report? Did you never ever followed up with the board to ask them where is that process with the investigation at Treasury?
You are asking this question, which is very important, but it should be clarified. The Treasurer never said to us, we are investigating your entity. There is no such a letter. It was our entity at the time that said we will consult or try to get a forensic investigating company from Treasury. And we agreed. We said, fine, as long as you will investigate this matter. Neither the company nor the Treasury nor the then board came to us and gave us any report. There's never been a report given to us on this matter, except a report commissioned by us.
Oh, we seem to have we lost the Deputy Minister there? Let's try and see if the Deputy Minister's line can be re-established. But there are some contentious issues here around the different investigations that have been made into this matter. Reports have suggested that the chairperson of the board had indicated that the Treasury's investigation was terminated because, and I quote here, there was a contamination of the process, and that investigation was never squashed, but it was only referred to the Department of Public Works. And what I'm trying to understand there is, if really there was an understanding that Treasury was somehow through its forensic unit, or there was going to be a forensic investigation, then why wasn't there a follow-up to say, if you guys have been investigating, how far is that? Where is the report? And if really the matter has been investigated, as the Deputy Minister says, and that a report is finalized, why then is that report not being made public? And that is going to be crucial, because it's going to help us understand the dynamics and what happened behind the scenes, and whether or not the CEO of the IDT was somehow receiving some form of political protection, because she ultimately, the CEO, moved from acting to being permanent as well. Apologies for that interruption of the line with the Deputy Minister Sihle Zikalala. So we've got some tweets that have come through around the question that we've been asking you tonight about this national dialogue that the President announced, and what you think this dialogue can achieve. Kutso on Twitter says, this is a clear waste of time. The people spoke through the elections. Politicians must just deliver on their mandate and stop acting like they do not know what they were elected for. Mohale says, I really am not sure what is the national dialogue we'll discuss that couldn't be addressed in the NDP 2030. We've had so many plans and commissions since the dawn of our democracy in 1994. The ANC has failed us. It must simply be replaced. That's all. The Observer says, we all know what is needed, but none of it is ever implemented and will still not be after this waste of yet more taxpayers' money. Bono says this will allow different views to be heard regardless of the status. It's a good move from the President. Well, it is a good move from the President, but haven't we been speaking for a long time about our challenges? I mean, we speak to politicians from different parties about the challenges facing this country. We speak through your WhatsApp voice notes when we do shows like this, when we discuss various challenges. There's nothing that's going to come out of this dialogue that we don't know. But it's important to have a conversation. What we need to be aware of and careful of is not to have just another talk shop. You know, we're ticking a box just so that government is seen to be doing something about our challenges. We need political will. We need the implementation of whatever is going to be resolved from these conversations. Here's what some of you have said on the voice note line.
Good evening, Clement, my brother. I think the whole dialogue is just a waste of time. Politicians in South Africa, they know what is the problem. Corruption is a problem. There's a high crime rate. There's a high unemployment rate. Our borders are porous. Those are the only thing of which all of us, we know them. This will be another way of wasting taxpayers' money. We just need practical solution and a political will. What a waste of time. Tsepo from Free State.
Sam Alekotriko Pislemen Dumela. The national dialogue will give its wish lists, things they want and things they don't. It takes us to the proverb that if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. This proverb suggests that if everything was achievable just by wishing or thinking, then even the most destitute people would have everything. You have to take actions if you want something to happen. Bye-bye.
Good evening, Clement. My name is Langa Maduleke from Mirafo. I think there is a need for a national dialogue. It is a step in the right direction, and which will also eventually lead us to having a referendum on a few things that we need to talk about. One of them being bringing back things like your death penalty, because crime has escalated in our country. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for your tweets and your WhatsApp voice notes as well. All right, let's wrap up that conversation with the Deputy Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Sihle Zikalala. We've got him back on the line now. Minister, as we just wrap up now, the reports that you've been mentioning have suggested that the former chairperson of the IDT indicated that the decision to terminate Treasury's mandate was informed by a, quote-unquote, contamination of the process, and that the investigation was never squashed but was referred to the department. So then if this is what the former chairperson said, then there was an understanding then that Treasury was investigating.
Well, Treasury, if it was investigating on behalf of the department, of the board, not the department. And therefore, if they stop that, it will be the process of the board. But they wrote to us and said, this process has been contaminated, and they request the department to investigate. We investigated
Which
that.
Process, Minister, Deputy Minister, which process did the board say it's been contaminated?
The investigation itself.
By Treasury?
By the previous board, by the then board that had initiated the appointment of Ms. Malaka.
Okay, but where does Treasury come in there? When you say the initial investigation by the board, are you indicating that investigation through Treasury?
When I came in, there was no investigation. I stopped the process of appointing the CEO. Then, in a discussion, we identified that there was this allegation. We mandated the board to investigate. It was the board at that time led by Mrs. Zimbini Hills that had a fight on how to conduct the investigation. On one side, there was a company appointed, or the Treasury appointed a company, and then it was not clear. That is the process that was contaminated, which the board, after appointing Advocate Mshengu, said, this process has been contaminated. Can you investigate it as the department? We investigated through the internal process, the internal audit committee. We then said the matter needs serious and a deeper investigation of the anti-crime and corruption unit. And I believe that department is with, that report is with the department now, because I commissioned it when I was a minister.
Okay.
But the new administration needed to finalize that.
Okay, yeah, Deputy Minister, we'll leave it there. I think the next step for us is to contact Treasury here, because it's clear that there was some kind of a conversation that was had with Treasury. Maybe they can confirm to us if indeed there was an investigation, and if it was stopped, that is going to raise some serious questions of why it was stopped, and why was that update not even given to you as someone who politically oversees things. Because if the board...
It will be important. I think the both part will be important. Who stopped it? Why they didn't engage me as the executive authority at that time?
All right. Sihle Zikalala, thank you so much for your time. We'll try and get Treasury to clarify that. Was it stopped? Who stopped that Treasury investigation? Because it was a forensic investigation. You're only stopping it to refer it back to the department, and at the same time, in that meantime, the CEO, right, who was facing these allegations, then gets appointed from who was not even permanent, then gets appointed to that position permanently, which then raises some serious questions. It's now we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to start a conversation with the DA leader in Gauteng about that issue of Helen Zille and potentially becoming the mayor of the city of Johannesburg. Stay with us. Welcome back. The DA Gauteng leader, Solly Msimanga, says the provincial leaderships is yet to discuss Helen Zille's potential candidacy for Johannesburg mayor. The DA's Federal Council chairperson announced she was considering contesting the mayoral position in Joburg. So let's bring Solly Msimanga joining us now via Zoom. Solly, thank you for making time. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and good evening to the SABC viewers. Thank you for having me.
So if you haven't yet, as the DA in Gauteng, discussed Helen Zille as a potential mayoral candidate, why is she going around doing interviews and suggesting, I'm ready to take up this job?
Well, I think it is important to note that the closing date hasn't come. The nomination date will close only on Friday. So I cannot talk about an individual candidate. There's already about 13 people that have applied. And possibly there could be more before we get to Friday. So we're not discussing an individual. We will discuss not only from a provincial perspective, but also from a regional perspective, as Joburg is a region on its own, and also including elements that will be coming from a federal executive committee level. So you have three levels that are participating in this whole process. And therefore, I don't think that it's fair now to be engaging about an individual while you would have 13 plus people that would be vying for this position.
Is it fair, though, for one of the individuals that are vying for the position, who, by the way, happens to be probably the most senior person out of that list that you are looking at, for this position of Johannesburg mayor to then be going around, because it almost seems like it's a soft campaign of sorts. What's the process in the Democratic Alliance? Aren't there people being interviewed first? Are people allowed to go out and say, oh, I'm considering this, this is what I may do to fix Joburg?
Well, I don't think that there is anything untoward. People have actually said before that they're willing to put up their names. You would remember a couple of years ago, Ghana Makashule, before there was even an announcement of who was going to be, a premier candidate, had already gone and said that he would put up his name. So there's nothing new, there's nothing untoward. So anybody who says that he's ready or she's ready and want to put up a position and actually then have ideas about how they will go about it, they can do that. But here's the thing, Clement. As I said, there is going to be three levels or three spheres of the components of the party that will be represented in the interview process. Candidates can put up their names, can actually then make announcements that they've put up their names. There's nothing, that prevents them from doing it. Certainly, when I stood as the premier candidate in 2024, I made that announcement before even going towards to the interview. So there's nothing untoward or nothing that prevents that. But you asked me what is the process. So the process is as follows. There is candidates that are going to be, putting in their nomination. Obviously, somebody gets to be nominated and seconded, and then we do what we call then the gatekeeping process. We do the validations and the vetting processes to then see, whether the person is actually a DA member. Actually, then there is testing that will then take place that looks at whether the person's values is aligned with those of the Democratic Alliance. And then there will be a process of the interviews. And then lastly, there will be a process where the people will then be psychometrically tested to then see, if indeed they will be capable of doing the job. So that is basically the process that, gets to be undertaken in the Democratic Alliance in terms of electing the mayoral or premier or even the presidential candidates. Yeah,
and I know you don't want to discuss names, and I respect that, Solly. But, I mean, Helen Zille is the one also, I suppose you understand, who's come out publicly, has gone on a media drive to explain why she's considering this and why she thinks she can, in fact, somehow come and fix Johannesburg. One of the questions a few people have asked themselves is, where's the pipeline of leaders that we're often told are available in the DA? I mean, is Helen Zille the best chance you have? This is someone who had retired from politics, come back. Now she must come back to public office. Doesn't the DA have equally capable leaders?
Clement, I think you're going about this the wrong way. There's nobody who's punting for Helen Zille to be the mayoral candidate. Nobody's doing that. There are people, I've said to you, there are people that have applied and there are people who are going to be interviewed. And a candidate will then emerge from there. I can tell you there's even actually people that are coming from the private sector as well that have said, I've led, organizations that, have been able to then turn around and possibly I can then avail myself, for this process as well. So what Helen Zille is now saying or doing has got nothing to do with what the outcomes will be. She's using what the party has not prohibited her from doing, and that is
Yeah.
making an announcement if she is actually going to stand. Because as far as I know, and I've spoken to her, she hasn't really made up her mind or actually even submitted a nomination, as far as I know, of her standing.
Okay.
So this is something that I think we are a little bit premature on this particular issue. There's quite a lot of things that still needs to be done within the party itself in order for us to get to a determination of who the candidate will be.
It's interesting that she hasn't submitted a nomination, but she's already talking about what perhaps she would be able to do if she were Johannesburg mayor. Yes, she's still thinking about it, but she hasn't submitted the nomination, but she's already doing interviews. Just lastly, what does the choice of a candidate for Joburg mean for the local government elections that are coming up in several months' time?
Well, the choice for the candidacy for Johannesburg will mean quite a lot. Johannesburg's failure is the failure of South Africa. I mean, people don't believe this, but it is actually true. We're talking about the economic heartbeat of South Africa being Johannesburg. Going to Johannesburg right now, I work in Johannesburg almost on a daily basis. It breaks my heart to then see that there are certain parts of Johannesburg that are almost war, no-go areas. They're almost like war-torn areas. If you drive into certain parts of Braamfontein, if you drive into Hillbrow, and then you see the amount of decay, you go into the industrial areas, which used to be, the pumping, the economic pumpers, of South Africa, which have now almost grounded to a whole infrastructure that is falling apart. And you have, a 40 billion plus, economy that, can actually, be, or administration that can actually then contribute so much to the South African economy and to the well-being of this country. And therefore, it is important that when we do get a candidate, it is going to be a game changer in this instance. Okay. It's going to be somebody that is going to then ensure that this heartbeat is actually then turned around. It's focus on what needs to be done. It's really contributing towards creating a South Africa that we can all belong, we can be proudly belonging to.
Solly Msimanga, DA leader in Gauteng, I really appreciate your time on Face the Nation this evening. Let's move to this now. The office of the Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, has denied the misuse and extravagant spend of state funds in his international travels. The Deputy President's travel costs recently made headlines following a response to a parliamentary question. Media reports amounted his international travel bill to close to 8 million rand since taking office in July last year. In a statement today, Mashatile says he has insisted on the most cost-effective travel for him and his delegation. For more on this, we're joined by Mashatile's spokesperson, Keith Khoza. Keith, thanks for making time. Good evening. Keith, are you able to hear us?
I can hear you now.
Thank you so much for making time. How much have the Deputy President's international trips cost taxpayers so far?
Well, since the noise that we've had in the media about his expenditure, we have asked DIRCO to consolidate all the figures and give us a confirmed figure that would show his expenditure, that of the ministers, the officials, and so on. So at the moment, we're still waiting for DIRCO to come back to us with that information. Because what happens is that when we travel abroad, it is our embassies that do the payments, not ourselves.
Yeah. So from the information that's been made available, because there was a response from the Deputy President's office to a member of Parliament when these questions were asked, from that information that's been provided, the Deputy President spent, for instance, 346,000 rand, we are told, 346,000 rand a night for accommodation in London for him and his spouse. Is that really the case?
Well, no. That figure is disputable. And that's why we wanted to come up with correct figures. Because there was a distortion on the numbers that were given out to the public. For instance, there's an official that is alleged to have spent over 500,000.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the total cost of that official was 66,000.
Okay.
So that gave us an indication that there is a misunderstanding or a deliberate distortion on the figures that were given linked to the expenditure. But also, Clement, the embassies would also pay for ministers, and then they do the recons much later to reclaim what must go back to the embassy.
Okay.
So that's the area that we wanted to be clarified, to say what was spent, which are the cost centers that go to the DP officials, ministers, deputy ministers, and so on.
Okay, but in the statement you released, though, when I went through it, you are only disputing, you said there may be issues with the costings and the figures being reported, but you only mentioned that of an official in the office of the deputy president. So this amount I've given you of 346,000 rand a night for accommodation in London, in your statement, this amount is not disputed.
No. We are checking all the figures. It's only that there was a specific mention, and we use that anecdotally, to say that if you look, one of the reasons why we need to go back and verify the figures is if you look at that case at hand, it gives us a sense that there is a huge discrepancy between what was and what was reported.
Okay, but you do understand, Keith, that if it is true, as you go back to look at the numbers, if the deputy president has stayed at a place where they're spending 346,000 rand a night for accommodation in London, that would be extravagant.
Well, what is important, and that's a matter that we were contacted DIRCO with, in terms of the limits. What defines the limits when they do the bookings? Okay. They are also guided by travel policy of government that limits what they can do, what they can't do. And everything comes back to PFMA in terms of accountability for all the resources that have been spent. So we can safely say that what DIRCO has done, or what DIRCO normally does, must be consistent with public finance standards and regulations. So from our point of view, we're convinced that DIRCO would not go out of its way to do something wrong deliberately. Okay,
but I'm sure, there's also the responsibility on the part of even whether it's the deputy president's office to make sure that, they are more cautious about and they care about, where money is being spent, because government doesn't really have money. So for instance, there was a ministerial handbook that allowed ministers at some point to just travel with their spouses, and that had to be changed. So the fact that there's a framework that when the deputy president travels, DIRCO works around it, then doesn't mean that you sit back and you say, well, I can stay at an accommodation that costs $1 million a night because the law or the regulations allow for it. You must still be cautious, right?
Hold it there, Clement. There's no cost of accommodation that goes for $1 million.
No, I know that's an example I'm giving.
I know you're using it as an example.
Yeah, I'm trying to demonstrate something. I'm trying to demonstrate
it may come across as a fact to some people.
No, it won't. It won't. That's why I pointed it that way, that you can't say, let's say 500,000 or even 200,000 rand. You can't say, well, it's 200,000 rand a night. The law allows for it. There must still be some responsibility you take to say, we don't have money as government. We are broke. So we need to be cautious where we spend money. So can I actually see the costings of the flights, of the accommodation, so that we are more cost effective in our approach? But I really want you to respond to this, Keith. Do you agree with many South Africans that as you go back to look at those costs, if the deputy president has stayed at a place that cost 346,000 rand, that is extravagant? Do you agree with that?
I cannot comment on that until I see the figures.
346,000 rand a night?
Yeah, but listen to me, Clement. I think that the point that we also need to emphasize is that when you, for argument's sake, you stay in a hotel that costs you 5,000 euros. Yeah? 5,000 euros. When you convert it into the exchange rate, prevailing exchange rate, it becomes a ridiculous amount, okay? Because of the exchange rate, ne? Not because of what you want to spend, because of what you have to spend in terms of the exchange rate. So for their currency, it looks small, it's 5,000 rands, but if you have to convert rands into that, it appears to be a huge amount, you know. But that is a standard rate for them in that country. It is not out of the norm.
All right, Keith.
In terms.
Yes, I got it. I'm sorry, I'm completely out of time, but I think we got the point about the exchange rate. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Face the Nation, and thanks to you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.